Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining from today. A very warm welcome to you. I'm Natalie Salser, and I'll be your host for today's session. And I'm thrilled to have you with us as we dive into a topic that's both timely and transformative, and that's migrating from legacy IoT platforms. I want to introduce these gentlemen, and customer experiences are really at the heart of everything that we do at Cumulocity. And I'm genuinely excited to be bringing you one of the best real world examples out there. Joining us today are Andrew Ledley and Brendan Saseski from Solenis. And they're not just experts, they're a dynamic duo from two different sides of the IoT equation. Andrew is the Director of Digital Services with a strong business lens, and Brendan brings that technical firepower that is so needed as well. Together, they've navigated the complexities of migrating from legacy platforms to modern IoT infrastructure, and they've got stories, insights, and lessons that you'll definitely want to take some notes on. And to help guide today's session, I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, Ricky Singh, who's the Vice President of the Americas here at Cumulocity. And Ricky, welcome. Before we dive in, let's start with a fun one. What's your favorite IoT migration story?
Natalie, well, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I'm pleased to be joined by such a fantastic, both looking and educated group of people. My favorite IoT migration story is actually Solenis, but our audience is going to have to hang tight towards the end of this presentation to hear about that one. So let's maybe start with this IoT migration story, probably not one that you expected, but I saw this post on Reddit and I thought it was just phenomenal. This is a satellite tracking trajectory of a female falcon that flew from South Africa, where Tanya and Josiah are from, to Finland, traveling at almost 150 miles a day over 42 days, covering over 6,000 miles. And the reason I found this fascinating, one, of course, I'm a bit of an IoT geek, so anytime you track anything, it tickles my fancy. But falcons, really have to follow the magnetic north. And if you look at just how this thing beelined almost dead north over 42 days here, and just diverted from its course to follow land so it could, eat along the way. And why did it stop in Finland? Because it was finished. So there's my bad joke for you for the day before we get started. It might not be my last one. But we do have an exciting agenda for you today. Of course, you read the excerpt, and most of you were excited enough by it to spend an hour with us. Really, we're here to talk about the topic of migration, starting with why is migration in the IoT sense even relevant at the moment? Why should we be considering it? Why is this the right point in the journey, your journey, whether you've already started or not started to think about this? Then what and how? If you made the decision that you will migrate, how do you go about that? What do you consider migrating? Where do we migrate to? And then we'll open it up to Andy and Brendan, who of course will participate with me throughout this presentation, but a real example of someone that's both felt the pain, but also felt the pleasure of having gone through the challenge of a migration. Have an open dialogue and a bit of a Q&A here with our audience so that you can chime in and ask your questions. So I hope that sounds good, and we're excited to be spending this time with you. On the theme of our falcon here, I thought I would open it up at the most broadest sense of migrations, and one of the most compelling migrations in the world, again, taking us to South Africa and the African desert here. Over 1.5 million wildebeest cross the Serengeti and Masai Mara every year, one of the largest land migrations on Earth. They travel roughly 1,800 miles in continuous search for fresh pasture and water. And each season, tens of thousands of those wildebeest are lost to predators and treacherous river crossings. You can see those pesky crocodiles in the water there waiting for them, which is a stark reminder of migration's inherent risks. But they do it because those greener pastures and that food is the driving point for them to carry forth this migration. And yes, 1% or 2% of their population might be lost, but the herd overall manages to survive. When we talk about technology, of course, migrations have a very different and drastic meaning here. But similarly, this is about leaving something behind in search of something new. And most folks on the call, if you're in the technology space, your last pretty drastic reminder of a migration might have been the on-prem to cloud journey, right? It's now about 15 years in the making, and some organizations are still on this journey themselves. But in 2025, roughly 85% of enterprises are expected to run most of their workloads in the cloud per Gartner. And those organizations often see anywhere from 20 to 40% cost savings after migrating those key workloads because they have reduced operational expenses, reduced hardware cost, and over 90% of large businesses are already relying on at least one public cloud service, showing just how widespread cloud adoptions become. Fortunately, you did not have to carry, or hopefully you did not have to carry any servers through crocodile-infested waters on your journey to the cloud. But whether it's wildebeest or enterprises moving critical workloads, migrations are high-stake journeys where survival and success hinge on careful planning and adaptability. So then let's start with the why now. Why, when we talk about IoT, is modernization and migration relevant in today's day and age? Many of us have been following the IoT journey for many years. I personally have been at some point in the IoT value chain for over 15 years. But the term itself started in about 2010, right? When it was sort of the term Internet of Things was coined. And if you follow the Gartner hype cycle, which sort of measures the introduction and manages the journey of emerging technologies, IoT's innovation trigger was in 2011, back when mobile phones and sensors had proliferated the universe, cloud was starting to emerge, mobile applications were the commonplace, and the world started to grow senses. And if I were to flash forward to 2025, AI had its innovation trigger, last year, and before that it was AR, VR, and the metaverse. So this is a journey that many technologies follow. The peak of inflated expectations, where almost everything was going to be connected, depending on the publication you followed, it might have been billions of devices or trillions of devices. But IoT sort of hit its peak of inflated expectations. Didn't matter what the question was, the answer was IoT in about 2016. And then we took our roller coaster ride down into the trough of disillusionment in a pretty long period, right? 2018 to 2022. And those that weren't prepared for this may remember this land of POC hell, where a lot of projects didn't actually survive this trough of disillusionment and didn't manage to actually get to the promised land, which was this slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. For those that managed to hang on for this roller coaster ride, we made it, right? We're now, as of 2023, through the trough of disillusionment and on to recognizing the value of these IoT implementations in various parts of our business. Having observed this from strategy consulting to being in telecom to working with hardware manufacturers and SaaS providers, I can tell you some of the key differences that I noticed from the beginning part of this journey, that 2010, 2011 to 2014 part. Many of those initial projects were technology driven. They were, just like today, LLMs are on probably most of your radars, and you're trying to determine finding the nail to hit that hammer with, right? It was a solution looking for a problem, and many organizations decided to pursue technology-led initiatives just because we can connect things, we should connect them, and that technology wasn't readily available. So in some cases, we had to purpose-built hardware, we had to purpose-built platforms, we may even have to think about wiring different networks for our own needs, and that led to a lot of concepts being proven. Hey, we managed to connect a light bulb, we managed to connect a sensor, but we didn't really manage to prove any value. And I still distinctly remember the first time I connected a light bulb in my home. I wanted to turn the lights off as I was watching TV, and I first had to find my phone, find the app, hit the button on the app, and I felt pretty stupid. I didn't feel like my home was smart. I felt like I should have just stood up and hit the switch on the wall, right? So I managed to prove that I could connect a light bulb, but it didn't actually improve my quality of life. And as we move through these IoT deployments, and on the other side of that trough of disillusionment, I'm seeing a lot of more projects today being business driven. There is a outcome that we're trying to drive towards, either efficiency in the field, increasing our customer satisfaction, driving some sort of outcome within the business, and then understanding what technology we want to apply. And that technology is far more interoperable today. Hardened, gateways, sensors, the telco environment for those that are out in the field and need cellular connectivity. Telecom's a lot more affordable and robust today, and a variety of different options from satellite to low power wide area networks and cloud services. This ecosystem coming together that's much easier to stitch together, allowing us to prove those outcomes faster. But the journey's not over yet, right? It would be nice if the roller coaster ride ahead was smooth and clear, but we have to be mindful. And I mentioned, why are we talking about migrations today? If you aren't careful, the roller coaster track in front of you might end very quickly, and you'll have to worry about those pesky alligators that we talked about in the beginning. And some of the reasons that we have to be careful are the evolving requirements of a number of parties. Requirements are evolving around the business. As people in your business understand this power of connectivity, they might impose additional requirements for good reason. There might be some very tangible outcomes they feel that they can drive, but now you have to incorporate that into your product roadmap. Your end customer, they watch Netflix and they order from Amazon. They are going to bring digital first requirements and digital first experiences with your products that many of the companies we deal with have been in business for decades, if not centuries. It's difficult to adjust to those customer expectations, and not to mention the regulatory landscape that's evolving very rapidly and imposing even additional constraints on businesses to be able to deliver against the needs of the business and the customers. Combine that with some of these legacy technologies that may have been leveraged in the earlier part of that hype cycle. Some of those components are going end of life. Now, again, having spent a few years in the telecom segment, 2G shutdown, right? The old 2G, 3G migration really, for those that use cellular connectivity, imposed a lot of challenges for them to actually go and change radios and modems inside of their connected devices. But we can also extend this to common platforms. We've seen over the last few years, platforms like Exida getting procured and then shut down. We've seen a lot. I think in its peak around 2019, there were 600 different IoT platform providers out there, and a lot of that space has become consolidated. Many people that decided to build or extend IoT platforms are now questioning whether that is their core competency. Even the hyperscalers like Azure and AWS that have a lot of building blocks are quickly turning their attention to the data and the infrastructure consumption, as opposed to providing the first-party software and tools needed to get data to their cloud. Last part, I think the technical debt component of this, both in the actual systems, these might be servers, and your organizational structure, are really putting pressures when businesses are, in today's day and age, hyper-focused on driving efficiency and eking every cent out of a dollar that's spent. So when you combine these three things, we see a lot of organizations barely surviving and not thriving in this slope of enlightenment, in the era where IoT should be delivering measurable results and preparing you for this AI-driven world. We want to see you thrive and not just survive. And there's some real and opportunity cost to this dilemma, right? Some real cost in terms of your spend, in terms of your OpEx or CapEx, or even in the opportunities that you may be missing out to capture, or your competitors may avail you on when you're competing out in the marketplace. So with that, I'd like to hear from the audience now, and make sure you haven't completely closed your screen and started working on something else while I blabber in the background. Let's go to our first poll of the day. I want to hear, what is your biggest pain point with your current platform? We will launch the poll here. You should see it come up on the right side of your screen next to the message screen. So if you'll go in there, you'll see some verbose options, and I'll talk a little bit to them here. Integration, the most common ones we see, right? Hey, we're having troubles integrating with other services within the business or outside of our business. We're having a problem scaling. We were fine for our first 500 devices, but now we're looking at scaling to 1,000, 100,000, or even 1 million. We have customers that are running over 1 million devices on our platform today. You have to think about your capabilities very differently at scales like that. Security and compliance. I think security is a hygiene factor. It's a need to have, not a nice to have when it comes to IoT. You may have concerns here about either the regulatory environment changing, that's imposing new compliance requirements, or security breaches in today's ransom-driven world. That's being a pest, a thorn in your side. Maintenance technical debt, the ability to turn data into insights, user experiences, lack of innovation, or the inability to have return on investment. While we're waiting for those results to come in, Andy, Brendan, any thoughts?
Yeah, the integration of data from multiple sources was our big headache a few years ago. Not a few years ago, geez, more than 5 years ago. And the comment you made around not being technology led, that was a tipping point, I think, for us around actually getting business cases around it, and not more of an IT led effort to get the funding to do it.
But that might have been almost a blessing for you as well, as you may have avoided some of the pain as the market matured a little bit, huh?
It was the biggest blessing in the world. And hopefully we'll illuminate that a bit more when we talk about our use case. But yes.
Awesome. Brendan, what about you? What do you see as people that you talk to in the industry, some challenges?
I mean, just reflecting on our own, I mean, looking at what we have in the poll, I mean, we don't want to be in the business of managing and building an IoT platform. We want to be developing solutions for our customers. And the pace that things are running at right now, whether it's user management, upkeep of the platform, scalability, all these things, so many of these, we may have had initial pain points where we needed to look towards Cumulocity, but I think as we're growing, it's becoming more clear where all these benefits lie. I mean, again, we don't want to be managing all of these things. We want to be building solutions. So,
thanks, Brendan. All right, so I can't say I'm very surprised. There's no wrong answer here, but unclear ROI, still, even in today's day and age, tends to be one of the most prevalent challenges with IoT deployments. Integration and compatibility, absolutely. That one had 12 votes, 20% of the votes for that one. And then scalability, right, was in third place. Difficulty handling increased data volumes and supporting more devices and users. So rest assured, we will cover each of those topics, but thank you for participating in the poll. Let's now go ahead and turn our attention back to the next agenda item, which was, okay, now we've talked about why it's important to migrate. Now, how do I go about it, right? Like the wildebeest, they decide they're going to head north, or our falcon friend decides it's going to head north. You may not know which direction to go in, and it can be a daunting task, especially if you have existing users, expectations of the business or leadership. It certainly is not an easy problem to solve. So we'll share a framework here with you that hopefully provides a starting point that you can use to start to consider some of the questions you should be asking yourself along with the rest of your organization that will assist you in taking the right first or few steps on this journey. I'll start again by saying, don't migrate if you don't have to. If everything's working flawlessly, if your customers are happy, your business case continues to be justified, if things are humming along, don't migrate just because it seems like the thing that everyone is doing, right? But generally not the place that everyone is in. So First and foremost, define and align your KPIs. So what are the things that you want to measure within the business, and ensuring that we're first able to define those and think beyond just cost of a platform, or beyond just uptime or cost savings. You may want to consider things like customer satisfaction, adoption of new features, or your ability to deploy new features. It's great if your platform works 99% of the time, but if you're only shipping one new capability a year, you're going to fall behind your competitors pretty quickly, right? You may even consider things like reputational impact if security is breached. That is a difficult one to measure, but it may be, depending on the line of business you're in, something quite critical that you want to keep an eye on, right? So back to our sort of animal migration. Hey, how much do we need to eat and for how long? That may determine when and how we migrate. After you've defined and aligned those KPIs, then you should be able to measure performance against those benchmarks that you set, right? So we can then audit your current deployment to document that performance, maybe even consider your security posture. We heard integration was a challenge. What are your integration points? Where are your, if your user surveys scoring is low, why? Where is that user experience falling short? And compare this baseline against your KPIs and determine where those largest pain points are. This will help you prioritize which of those components need the most urgent attention, and those are the ones that we can focus on for your migration. Then lastly, in this validate section, is to classify those risks in technical risks, so data loss and downtime, operational risks, so we have to maybe train people internally or adopt new processes. Maybe there's an extensive amount of pain for your end user, right? So that operational risk should also be classified. Or strategic risks. Is this this venture or project we're embarking on misaligned with our company vision? If we've stated something as an organization at the top level, is something that we're looking to do going to directly contradict that? Once we've done some validation here, we want to move quickly into the quantification portion of this journey. And same as the wildebeest, right? If we're going to justify our journey to greener pastures, we may lose 1 to 2% of our population. Is it worth it? And how do you, if that journey, if you were going to lose 20, 30, 40% of your population, those wildebeests may consider if it's worth making that journey, right? So quantifying that pain is going to be incredibly important. And that starts with costs. And costs can be, of course, raw costs, things like hosting fees, things like productivity dips or compliance expenses. But I mentioned earlier, think about opportunity costs here as well, right? How is your legacy system slowing down your innovation or your time to market? Are there new entrants that are maybe digitally native that are threatening to disrupt your business that you may not have considered before? Timeline and resources, right? Identify some interdependencies. An example here might be if data warehouse modernization is happening in parallel within your organization and IT team or somebody in the background is looking at moving workloads to the cloud, how might that impact your migration? It could impact it negatively or might actually impact it positively if you have some cost synergies that you can ascertain in that phase. And then establish some critical milestones. When do we want to do an alpha test or a pilot before we commit to a full rollout? And define both the human and financial resources required for those milestones. And lastly, we heard the second greatest challenge in our poll, the business case and ROI, right? Really think about a total cost of ownership model and compare the status quo versus migrating to a modern platform. If we stayed in our current pastures, yeah, we may run out of food, but it may not happen for 8 years. Is that justifiable? Or what is the true total cost of ownership for us to embark on this project and develop a clear ROI projection with multiple scenarios, right? Your best case, average, worst case, so that stakeholders can see the range of potential outcomes for your migration journey. This quantification section matters because having clear financials and a robust timeline doesn't just justify the project to leadership, but provides the cross-functional team. In an IoT project, it's always a cross-functional team, allows them to provide a roadmap for measuring success at each stage. Andy, I saw you nodding your head. Any thoughts or comments here?
The cross-functional team part actually is one of the great joys that Brendan and I have, is this collaboration effort. And to Brendan's comment earlier, the joy is developing solutions for customers and focusing on that, not on the underlying infrastructure. So just to add to your comment.
Fantastic. Okay, so once you've validated and quantified, then it's time to plan. And those first two might seem like planning activities, but now we're really determining, hey, time to leave for greener pastures. Which lands can we go to? How can we get there? How do we minimize loss and disruption? Think about your strategies. What strategies are available to you? And a lot of times we see the topic of migration feel very binary. It's all or nothing. We either stay here or we leave. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? You could do a partial or phased migration. This is ideal if you have highly critical legacy components or a user base that's not very susceptible to change. Prioritize the services or functionalities that get you the greatest and immediate ROI. We've seen customers that knew they needed to migrate off a current platform, but wanted to keep their front end. In this case, it was a medical use case. Their users are not the most technology savvy. They might be nurses or doctors in a hospital. They didn't want to have to retrain them on their solution, right? So we actually, in that scenario, kept the front end, did a partial migration, kept their front end solution the same, and were able to rip and replace that decaying and aging backend with an API native cloud platform that got them to their new solution in 4 months, right? Full migrations, of course, simplify the environment, but raise the stake for careful planning. And we often have to choose when that legacy system is, excessively costly. There is also a sort of keep the lights on approach, right? As we start to migrate to greener pastures, we may keep an existing system sort of up and running because it may not be worth the cost of deploying new devices in the field. However, we may have SLAs or contractual obligations to those customers. Once you understand your available strategies, evaluate the solution landscape. So again, in today's day and age, there are infrastructure as a service providers like AWS and Azure. There's platform as a service providers, software as a service providers, and hybrid options in the context of your future roadmap. I like that Brendan said, hey, we are in the business of delivering solutions for our customers. You'll learn more about what that means for Solenis. Focus on your core competency and look at the landscape out there to see who can help you get to those pastures faster, more reliably, and will join you for that journey and not just point you in the direction and say go. And lastly, minimize disruption. Think about a user-centric rollout and don't underestimate change management. Strategic scheduling, doing portions of migration during low traffic windows, over communicating to both your internal customers as well as your external customers, and get feedback along the way. And encourage adoption and feedback, provide training, FAQs, take a champion program approach, both internal champions and external champions to help with that transition to greener pastures. We, of course, are part of that solution landscape that we hope that the audience here on the call today has joined us. You've at least heard about Cumulocity as you made it into the room, but why is Cumulocity an excellent choice for you to consider? Well, we are the modern platform solution, right? We survived that storm of 600 platforms consolidating. Cumulocity was actually founded in 2011. And through that period of time has managed to continue to deliver outcomes for our customers with a very sort of purpose-driven approach in providing a platform that meets the needs of especially equipment makers, but any company that's embarking upon a IoT initiative. And that starts with a cloud-native platform that's open and extensible, right? So IoT, I often say you couldn't have stitched together 3 more vague words than Internet of Things. What things? What internet, right? There may be hundreds of millions of different types of devices that all speak a different language. So Cumulocity is agnostic to the type of device that it's connecting to, and we use open protocols, most common ones like MQTT or REST or OPC UA, so that we can integrate smoothly. Integration was the largest pain point in the poll earlier, smoothly with legacy systems and a broad ecosystem of third-party devices and applications. And that really eases the pain for some of these partial or phased migrations. We also have plug-and-play integration with an API-driven platform that really simplifies the validate and plan phases of your journey. And that platform is future-proof and flexible. So it grows along your needs. We manage all of the infrastructure in the background with our cloud service providers so that you can manage against that quantification in your ROI business case and maximize or minimize rather your total cost of ownership. We're secure and scalable. So security, again, as I mentioned, cannot be an afterthought in IoT. Cumulocity is security by design, right? End-to-end encryption, including things like role-based access control. We continuously monitor the evolving landscape of threats. It's not, security, unfortunately, is not one of those things you can push out an update once a year and then you're done. Because the people in Russia and China are adamant that they're going to break into your platform. So how do you go back and continuously look at your encryption and work with the ecosystem for things like security and certificate management to ensure your deployments are secure and meet those global compliance standards, right? These might be things like ISO or SOC compliance, but we're seeing GDPR standards, we're seeing California Data Privacy Act. These will all impose additional constraints on your business that you're not in the business of, but we are, right? So as your platform provider, we ensure that your platform continues to meet compliance standards. Scalability and high availability. We don't take scale lightly from your first device to your millionth device. Our distributed architecture and auto-scaling capabilities, along with our multi-cloud support, really support your growth throughout that journey and avoid any performance bottlenecks that may arise as you go through that quantification of your migration. And lastly, things like resilience and disaster recovery that is built into the platform so that there's minimal disruption to your business if or when something goes wrong. Lastly, this is not just a platform. We have a team of experts that's guided a multitude of customers through this journey, and that platform and guidance, the combination of those two things is really what helps you in both your execution and refinement phases, providing you some best practices, some accelerators, and some dedicated support teams that can help you in your migration journey. Rapid deployment and data migration utilities, helping you understand how you may be able to leverage your existing data lake, how you may be able to use your front end or capabilities that you built in your current system and ultimately help you in that execution stage. And lastly, flexible commercial models to match the quantification, the total cost of ownership and ROI needs for your business, whether it's a advanced shared cloud or a dedicated cloud or an on-prem deployment. We call this the edge to cloud continuum. Regardless of what your technical needs are, we have flexible commercial models that will help you measurably in your ROI goals. Now, nothing brings this capability to life more than a real customer example. And I know Andy's going to do a much richer introduction on what Solenis does, but imagine, water. Our bodies are made primarily of water. The planet we live on is made primarily of water. And water is the star of the show at almost every major industrial company, from pulp and paper to chemical refining. Water tends to be in the spotlight. Imagine Solenis as being in the backstage. If you touched a piece of mail or paper today, chances are that you touched a Solenis process without even realizing it. They're the industry whisperer behind the scenes, and they're armed with advanced, not chemical solutions, but now a digital know-how to keep that water flowing, those systems humming, and ultimately their customers' business thriving. And again, as Natalie mentioned, I could not be more blessed to have partners like Andy, Brendan, and the rest of the Solenis and Diversity team to tell you a little bit about their migration journey. So Andy, over to you, sir.
Wow, I couldn't have scripted a better introduction to kind of our company and what we do. Brendan and I are blessed every day that we get to work in an environment where we can impact how our customers are using water. So we focus in a lot of water intensive industries. The core of our business is chemical manufacturing. So we manufacture chemistries that customers can apply into their various water intensive applications that help them do things like make paper, treat water in municipal plants, make food and beverage. It's a pretty complex but fascinating tapestry. And I'm kind of proud to be able to support Cumulocity with our story, because I think maybe in many ways we're like the worst case scenario of a company to make the move to adopt this, because there's a lot of complexity around what we do. We've grown by acquisition tremendously. We were probably a quarter of this size 5 or 6 years ago. So when you see infection prevention and food and beverage safety, a large acquisition that we just completed in the last couple of years was Diversey, who is an industry leader in the space of cleaning, sanitization, and hygiene in food and beverage and hospitality and institutional markets. So they all have their own unique needs around devices and data and what they work with them. So it's challenging, but it's a lot of fun. And we have about 200,000 customers. So we have a lot of customers globally to deal with. We're about $7.5 billion business, playing in a space where we have 85 billion of market opportunity. So, retaining our existing customers was probably what was the biggest driver 5 or 6 years ago from moving to a Cumulocity platform. But it's pivoted now to leveraging that to helping us grow faster and capture more of that $85 billion market opportunity out there. We're very innovation focused. So we have a lot of scientists on staff. We have a lot of laboratories around the world. And our focus has always been on chemistry innovation, but the last few years, having the infrastructure that you can build a digital solution on and deploy, that gives you the ability to focus on innovation in the digital space. So we're much happier, as Brendan said earlier, spending our precious talent on that part of it, not on the underlying infrastructure. So if it's not obvious by now, we are in a lot of industries, and even within those groupings, a biorefinery in industrial has some things in common, but there's a lot of differences between an oil and gas producer, a power plant, a municipal treatment plant. So for us to be able to build solutions to hit on the unique needs of all of those different sectors, again, we need a platform that's very scalable and quick and easy for us to build on. And so Cumulocity has provided that to us. If we go to the next slide. So we actually enjoy a good market leadership position in a couple of the areas. In others, we're more looking to catch up. So I said the core of our business is manufacturing chemistry. We are, generally speaking, a direct sales and service model. So that means we have a lot of our 16,000 employees are out there in customer sites every day, serving those customers. And to get the right chemistry into the systems the way that it needs to get in there with respect to the timing and the dosage and all of that stuff, that does require automation and equipment. So while we're not a primary manufacturer of equipment, we'll either contract that out, or in many cases we'll be an internal fabricator and we'll bring some devices together to create a complete system that we can then deploy to the customer. But the key to it is, where can we, with all of those devices out there, can we connect to the cloud and can we get the data? And so the Cumulocity platform, you guys actually continue to help us even source other companies in the IoT equipment space that we can work with to make it more turnkey and seamless. Because I'll tell you, the biggest challenge is at the shop floor in the plant. It's getting the customers, IT people engaged, equipment people maybe in the customer site that have to help us install it. So the more seamless that is, the better. And so you guys are a big aid to us. So why did we pick Cumulocity? So the scalability part, hopefully that's self-evident. Imagine the complexity of trying to build and deploy solutions across all of those applications. In many of them, we're not treating one application. In a paper mill, we're treating 10 parts of a paper machine with different chemistries, and they all have different metrics coming off of those that we need to measure and respond to. Security and reliability. It goes without saying, you know, we are in healthcare, we are in food and beverage, and you cannot have something fail in those markets or be subject to any risk. We're in gold mines on the process side there. And if you've ever had, going to gold mine is a wild place to visit. And where at the end of the mine, where everything kind of comes together, it is like Fort Knox above ground. But again, there's a challenge of getting data at a remote site and then working with it to help the customer better manage the process. You know, we're adding a bunch of chemistries in there, but ultimately it's not about the chemistry, it's how are they using it to get an outcome on their process. I talked a few minutes ago about culture, right? So for me personally, working with Cumulocity has been a delight. We've now a few years in with you guys, and when you have an event, you know, a customer advisory board or whatnot, a lot of times we're building a meeting around that, because it gets, you know, Brendan and his counterparts and myself an opportunity to just roll up our sleeves and work together on things that we're doing. That culture of collaboration, of wanting to work with your customers and really like listening to what we're looking for and what our needs are, it helps us a lot. And my hope is that it also helps a lot of other Cumulocity customers, because when we do sit on your advisory board, a lot of the similar needs in that come up. And then the last point, maybe the most important around the decision making. So, you know, it was about what, 3 years ago, I guess, we made the decision to go with Cumulocity, and it was after making a bunch of runs at it, you know, to get a platform in place. So when we were a quarter the size we are now, you know, we only had maybe hundreds of devices connected to a standalone platform. I'm a Canadian, but you know what? I would never put the platform in Edmonton, Alberta. It's a lovely province, but you know, we had servers there on a third party, and when we wanted to make an improvement in the platform or add a capability, it was expensive. It was very slow, and at the same time, we're also acknowledging that we were rather behind some of our largest competitors. So they had 5-10 years earlier began building their own platforms and putting a lot more money and investment into it. And I think one of the turning points for us to get support was when we started to identify actually what it was costing them to do that, to maintain it and to build on top of it, not in terms of even just money, but speed. We're blessed to have a very forward-looking CIO in Charles Wallace. So he is the owner for our IT enterprise strategy for the business, and he is a diehard buy and build guy. You have to do both. And so a lot of our efforts to build our own platform, you know, we elected not to do it. It was just too expensive for what the business could afford at the time. So we kicked the can down the road another year. And it was when we started to see companies like Cumulocity and a few others and what they were offering that I think he felt comfortable. You know what? I think that's something we can pull the trigger on. And eventually we chose Cumulocity, much less capital intensive approach to getting up and running quickly, and then being able to migrate off of that old platform that we were struggling with, that we were wasting a lot of money on, and getting onto a new platform where we're getting a much better return on our investment. So hopefully that's a helpful explanation of how we got to where we are.
Andy, that was fantastic. And yes, I think, you know, I always say connecting people is far more fun than connecting things. And I always enjoy the time that we get to spend with the Solenis team, and the feedback that you've given us as being part of our advisory board that have improved the platform, not just for you, but for all of our users out there. So for that, I'm thankful. You said a couple of really interesting things that, of course, make me happy. The buy and build strategy, focusing on your core competency. The fact that, yes, you might have been late to market, but as we discussed earlier with that hype cycle, it may have been a blessing, right? Because many of your competitors are now thinking, oh man, we've got even more technical debt than we thought. It's even more painful to migrate. Any sort of, key, what surprised you most during your migrations journey?
I want Brendan to chime in here. Maybe I'll go first while you collect your thoughts. But the surprise for me was Travis McAllister, who is our AI leader, always says that technology is easy, people are hard. And so I always had this vision that if you build it, they will come. But getting our user base is typically our own internal sales and technical support people, right? Like they're the ones that need to use the tool, and getting them to migrate off of the old platform, which was not great, to what we felt was better, was definitely, that was the biggest surprise. Was it took a fair bit of time, and Brendan has actually uncovered ways that I think helped to turn the key for a lot of people.
What do you think, Brendan?
That's great. Yeah, let me add to that. I mean, I think a big surprise for me actually just goes back to the complexity of the platform, in that our old platform was really targeted towards kind of just some of the users that need to consume the data. But if we look at what we get now with Cumulocity, we get to support our engineers, the people managing devices, all the way forward to our sales team, people want to work with the data, and then customers that consume it, all within the same space. And it's a lot of infrastructure. It's not just consuming data and putting together a single dashboard. We get there's so much complexity there that is just become simple because it's all just kind of built in, and it has really helped us speed up. Our growth trajectory continues to increase. And so, yeah, that's been a surprise to me, is how much complexity there really is, and that you really come to appreciate what you don't have to keep up with. So,
Brendan, what advice would you give to somebody on the call here today that may be on the beginning part of that migration journey?
Well, I mean, I guess also it might not be easy, but this will probably be easier than your alternative might be a way to start. I think the other part, though, is the partnership, as you guys were discussing. I mean, the relationship we have working with Cumulocity has just been amazing. The resources, the speed of support, the innovation that we get, and when there is something that we're unsure of how to solve, we've never incurred a situation where we can't solve it, and we do that relatively quickly. So I think the partnership is another area where, if you're looking to migrate and you haven't made the jump yet, the partnership that you'll get is going to really help accelerate that journey.
If I go back to, and Natalie mentioned this when we opened, both of you bringing such a complementary experience, and you looking at the business side and your end users, and do they have the outcomes that they're looking to drive? Brendan looking at maybe internal users, speed to acceleration. Maybe Andy, if you could start with, what are some of those business outcomes that you've been able to prove, both on your digital transformation journey overall, and then specifically working with a partner like Cumulocity?
Yeah, I think the biggest business outcome, and actually one of the things that helped, there's always a tipping point, right? It seems like, and so I will say, customer retention, the biggest tangible outcome initially. As I'd mentioned before, we were lagging behind in investing, and a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we started to see customers putting out a bid for a water treatment vendor, a pulp paper process chemistry vendor, and suddenly in the bid scope there was digital. What kind of digital solutions are you going to bring to the table? And so our business started to come under threat because we just didn't have as strong of an offering. So what was really cool was we were able to quickly, the timing was good because we were just embarking on Cumulocity, and within a matter of months we were able to stand something up, and then have something in the conversation for our sales teams that said, what, we have something that's competitive from an IoT perspective. We can gather data, we can remotely monitor things, we can analyze it. And that's only just and continued, and it's a part of the way that we operate hand in glove with sales. Yep. Is we like the agility that working on the Cumulocity platform offers. We don't need to do an expensive scope of work for everything that we need to deliver. Part of buy and build is also part of what do you outsource for people to work on a platform and what do you work on internally, and we have I would say a mixture of that, and that allows us to be responsive to when there's a bid going on, and our corporate sales leaders come to us and say, can you help us with this or that?
And then you pick up the phone and call Brendan and say, hey, how quickly can you build this platform? Right. So Brendan, if you can, on the flip side of that coin, there's a lot of different, when we say users, that term is incredibly broad. You might have application developers, you might have people that are focused on the actual systems. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of roles and users, and how do you leverage some of the capabilities in Cumulocity to distinguish between them?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at the core of this, we're really trying to stand behind our sales team to deliver things for their customers. So I think, if you look at all the markets, we have a good range of talent there, from, engineers all the way up through, all kinds of skill sets, right? Depending on the market. But definitely, kind of starting with the data bringing in, working with the sales. I think having our applications experts and other folks use tools like analytics builders, or just being able to kind of customize through dashboards and do a lot of POC work on their own, a lot of proof of concept. Like let's do some exploration. We know what we want to look at, but we're interested in what we can do next. I see a lot of value there, and I think the users definitely from the analytics perspective. Once the data comes in, we don't just want to look at it; we want to do something with it. And like I said, there's the out-of-the-box tools, and not only that, though, we've built up a team within our digital space, a digital adoption team, that has become kind of our experts on doing those functions, so that when our new sales teams come and really support that change management, and we say, great, we've connected your systems, we have the data, here you can look at it, but our digital adoption team is able to work with them, give them training, help them get into these tools. And I think they're easy enough to get started, but it's also very powerful. So there's a learning curve, and we've done, I think, an excellent job navigating that.
Very good. Yeah, I think the thing that I enjoy every time we meet with the Solenis team, it always starts from the customer back, right? Hey, how is the end user going to use this, and what is that end user doing? Are they going to need a mobile app? Are they going to be looking at a stationary screen? How do we build a dashboard for them? And then even looking at your internal users, many of them, may be power users and putting hands on keys, but now they don't have to program a widget. They may be able to click and drag something within an interface to build an application, which is great. So let's open it up. I haven't seen any questions coming through the chat, but we'll open it up to the audience to see what questions you might have for either the Solenis team or myself.
Andrew and Brendan, I think this comes to you from an internal Solenis employee, but how does it work if one customer has 300 sites and the headquarters wants to have an all-in-one dashboard?
Do you want me to answer that one, Brendan, or do you want to go?
I can go for that. I mean, certainly as we've been talking through here, we're able to consume the data and work on those dashboards, templates. We have a lot of support and teams in place, so that if you say we got 300 sites, we want to be able to deliver a similar experience on a per site basis. When it comes to, how do you deliver that at a higher level? I think another great thing that we have with this platform is that we're also able to interface this data into other applications as we need. So this is kind of the next evolution of where we're taking our digital space, is to start pulling in insights that look at all of a customer sites, things at a higher level, and being able to summarize that for different users, right? Because not everybody is an engineer that wants to watch a trend line move and do analytics on it. And so that is something that we're doing, and the Cumulocity enables us to do that fairly easily, whether we're working inside of Cumulocity or we're looking now to build our own applications. Connecting with the data is fairly seamless.
Fantastically said, Brendan. I would also add to that, a customer of that size may want some limited command and control on their own, right? The ability to provision users or have an application interface with their logo on it, and the multi-tenancy capabilities, right? The ability to give them a dedicated tenant of their own inside of the Solenis platform is something that may help a customer of that size as well. Andy and Brendan, I could not be more fortunate to have great co-hosts like you today, and we look forward to having you on future Cumulocity sessions as well. If you'd like to connect with any of us, let's see how quickly you can get your phones out and scan some QR codes here. Or I think we all have relatively unique names and company names. You can also search for us on LinkedIn. With that, I hope you have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. And thank you again for spending the time with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ricky. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, guys.